Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here for the third and final workshop in our Success in Family Firms series. Thank you all, those of you who were able to participate with us, and for those of you who are going to watch this on video, we're sure that you'll appreciate all the content that we've put together over the last 3 sessions. Once again today, our session will be moderated or facilitated, by Mike McGrann of the Telos Group. And on behalf of myself, Patty Diggin, my colleague, Dr. Monica Zimmerman, my graduate assistant, Gabby Velasquez, I'd like to thank you all again for participating in this and also for participating in other events and activities sponsored by the Cottrell Center and Westchester University. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thank you. So it's a small and intimate affair this morning. Question then, let's take advantage of the fact that this is a small and intimate affair and make it personal. So as you think about your own family enterprise, your own family, what you have going on in work, what do you feel, upon reflection of those of you who have been for the first 2 sessions, the biggest challenges are that you face? Let's take just 1 minute in terms of your own business, your family. What are the biggest challenges? Just take 1 minute. I'm going to set the timer. The biggest challenges you face. Okay. So who wants to share their biggest challenge?
Start.
Fantastic.
With with the strategy and policies, by decision, as opposed to letting it happen to us.
Okay, so your biggest challenge, when you say policies, are you talking about just in general in the company, like what happens if there's, someone's drinking on the job or something like that, or are you talking about with your own family getting involved?
My own family, I work with my brother and sister currently. We've had business for 30 years. We're successful, and I'm 61. I have children that are not in the business. I have a brother who has children that are not in the business, who's still in college, and we just want to map out a plan, which we don't have currently.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on getting an understanding of direction, and that's why I attended these last 2 today. And we know we're going to need help, but
So what's the no baloney? If you're really honest when you look in the mirror, what makes it hard for you guys to go from, hey, intuitive what we're doing every day, to being very intentional about planning, A, and B, being really honest with each other about how this succession thing's going to work? What's the biggest challenge? The no baloney part.
To be fair and equitable to our strategy of each and who gets what in the next tier.
And that's a great point, because the trick with fair, as we said earlier, is that fair is not, there's an equation. Fair does not mean equal. And that's really hard, right? Because what's fair to you is not fair to you. 1 + 1, we can all agree, equals 2. But what's fair to your son, your daughter, and your brother's son and daughter are completely different things. And so you and your brother sitting there trying to think about how do we be fair when fair is a matter of perception. So the question is, I forgot your name. Mike. I'm Mike. So the question for Mike is, how does he do that? How many total, you, your brother, and how many kids total?
5.
5. So 5 kids. There's 7 people sitting around the table. How does he do it? When perceptions of fair, of how this thing gets passed, who owns it, who works there, all that stuff, who gets paid, everybody's got a different opinion about fair. And you could argue all day long about it. So what does he do?
And I have to say, what complicates it even more is that I have a sister that's also a partner, doesn't have children, and I think wives, because I'm married, my wife has an opinion, and so does my wife.
So it's Mike, your brother. Does your sister have ownership also?
Yes.
And are all 3 of you guys married?
No. I mean, married. My sister's not married and no children.
Oh, okay. How many kids you have?
I have 2.
2, 3, 0. Spouse? Does your brother have a spouse? So we got another person here, another person here. So what's that? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's put 10 people in a room.
That's fine.
Yeah, and if I'm Mike, I got to try to go home and have a decent relationship with this person who's got a lot of thoughts about how this whole thing is going to work. That's not your wife.
Yes.
You have other siblings?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, boy. So back to the question of, here's 10 people, all of whom have an opinion, all of whom matter to him, all of whom he loves, one of whom is his wife. And it's kind of, I apologize. That's not really fair. I mean, I was just joking around. That's not fair at all. But the reality is, the number one relationship for Mike is his wife, right? And yet he's got kids he cares deeply, and his brother, and his sister-in-law, and his sister, and his kids. So how do you do that? How does he possibly come up with a fair program for everybody?
I have a question for Mike. You have siblings that are not in the business. Do they weigh in their 2 cents every once in a while about the business?
Yeah, I have one brother who owns a different business, and he is kind of been a mentor and confidant in strategy and whatnot. He's very involved. We own a building, and he's a partner in the building.
Oh, that's great. Good question, because what you're saying is you guys also have not only this operating business, whatever this is, you also, all you guys together have some real estate that you own together.
Right.
Oh, that's okay. So gets even more complicated. All right.
I guess he's going to need the advanced session, huh?
Session 4.
Do you have some dogs and cats and like snakes and stuff we can add in here? Like, what else can we make it more complicated for you? I don't know. But so how does he do it? Like, what are your thoughts? What's your advice to Mike? He's saying, I got challenges with this whole big system. This is a big system, right? It's like an ecosystem. It's a business system. How do I become more intentional about planning, succession? Most importantly, how do I be fair? And I'm speaking as if I'm Mike, but if I'm Mike, I'm concerned about all of these relationships, because the last thing I want is to not be able to have Thanksgiving dinner and have someone be ticked off at me at Thanksgiving and say I'm not coming because I'm pissed.
Now I have a statement. My first thing that comes to mind is the first thing that comes to mind is coming together and putting things in writing. Because if you think about it, I understand we're family, but when you put things in writing and then something comes up, you can say, hey, listen, we all agreed.
So what kind of things? Be specific.
The policies. Put policies
about what?
In place. Policies about, do you have operating policies in place?
I mean, we have for our current, how our employees, like for example, I call it HR policies, where you're sick for X days. You do,
Right.
You give me this, or no, you get this many days time off. I mean, those, I would say operational policies we do, but as far as integration of family, as far as policies, like one we've just adopted, and that is, we want.
I'll sit over here, we'll talk together.
It kind of happened because we were kicking it around, is that I have two boys that both graduated college, and my advice to them was to go work for somebody else before they come into the business, because they have expressed interest in coming into the business. They've worked their summers and that kind of thing in the business, working on trucks, and so they're familiar with it because they grew up with it. But they're not, one was a business major, one was an economics major. They have interest in business. My oldest boy just started law school. But he says he wants to help our business and help it continue to grow. So, that policy hasn't been written, that go work for 4 years with somebody else. Now, we've said it, but we haven't written it.
So the wisdom of writing it, just like she's saying, is that now and that's just one. Like, and I'd be happy to send to Patty an example of family involvement policy, just what another family has done, so you could see it. But I think your point is around the money. Once you write it down and everyone agrees, hey, here are the rules for before you come into the business. And I'm not talking about internships and sweeping the floor and driving the forklift. I'm not talking about that. But like, if you want to come into the business and you're one of these 5, here are the rules. You got to work outside, because the worst thing you do is you got to work 4 years, but then you work 2 years, and then the one who, I don't know, was a beach bum down on a lifeguard and there's Jersey Shore for 10 years, all of a sudden walks back and wants a job, and we give it to him or her because we feel sorry for him. Anyway, the point is, we got to, if it's written, these are the rules. We all agree. There's a whole list. I think it's a great thing you're thinking about, Micah. What are the rules policies by which these folks get involved? Here's the question. Here's the trick, I think, though, from Mike. Since fair, his perception of fair and your brother's, who's got the final call on this?
Well, I mean, in our family business, it's been me, as far as the final call. Although we're equal partners, the final decision has been, it's been me. I started the business asking my brother and sister to come be a part of it, and we, equity-wise, made everybody equal.
Your thoughts?
I don't know, man. That's
Your thoughts? Recommendations?
That's good. Do you have that in writing? I know I keep saying in writing, but when it comes to having things in writing, you can be fair. You know what I'm saying? It's just like if you were working for ABC company and everything's in writing. That's a huge responsibility, though. Everything is on you, but yet the 3 of you are equal.
Are you 1/3 each?
Yes.
Ownership?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, it's complicated. Any other thoughts?
Is there any kind of consensus or agreement among the 3 of you?
Yeah, for example, we had a buy-sell agreement that was funded in case,
Oh, that's good.
happening. So, it was funded with life insurance so that Stephanie or Meredith didn't become partners with my brother Joe and Mary, from a buyout. That policy expires actually this year. You're coming.
Can you unexpire it?
Well, we can unexpire the language, but the funding of it.
Oh, I see. Got it.
Is the part that's getting was expired. It was funded by a term life policy.
Okay.
And
They spike.
Huh?
They spike.
Yeah, they spike after
We're
the.
like 20 years, and it goes from a couple grand to like 50 grand.
That's where
Ouch.
we're at. So
Yeah.
we're not
Ouch.
doing that, 'cause we'll fund it internally.
It just expires.
Yeah. So I think you've raised two really critical things that are really critical, what we refer to as ownership strategy. I'm not talking about business strategy, what you're charging the customers, but ownership strategy is a big, and this is an ownership decision. In theory, Mike, it's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. I get that historically, you made the final call, but what are those rules? And if, Pat, you remind me, I'll send you an example so you all have it of a family involvement policy. Address all those things like, do you have to work outside? How do you get paid? What are the rules for getting paid? What are the rules for how we're going to evaluate people? What if if your kid shows up and he starts playing golf every day? Can he be fired? And all those things, I think to your point, Lisa, if I know going in, if I screw up, I'm going to get fired. If the spouses all know that's the deal, it's not easy to do. But what are the rules about in-laws? All those things. But also, who can own stock? And do you have to work in the business to own stock? Or can you own stock? Are you going to pass it to all 5 kids? So those are issues you and your brother and sister have to work through. But we'll definitely send you that policy. That's a great starting point. And having it written. The one other thing, here's one other thought I was going to say. The challenge for folks like you, Mike, is you're right. You got 10 people here. I don't even know if I did the math wrong. To Lisa's point, there could be 30 more I don't even know about. But all those players. All of them, here's the bottom line. All of them are impacted by the decisions you make. So our philosophy is, if I'm an impacted player, I'm a player on this team, I may not have the final vote, but I want to have a voice. And I would say to you and your brother and sister, you owe everybody here a voice. But let's just remember, they don't have a vote. Because just the fact you're sitting at the table and your wife or your sister-in-law or your kid or your niece says, what do you mean I'm not guaranteed a job? I don't get it. What are you talking about? This is a family business. Don't you love me, Uncle Mike? How could you say this? All that stuff. They might have that opinion, but everyone's got to know we walk in the door, everyone's got a voice, only 3 people, and ultimately 1 person has the final vote. And that is the deal. It's really important that people get their head around voice does not mean vote. The trick, just with spouses, right? If Patty and I are married, it's a 50-50 call about where we're going on vacation or where we're going to dinner. Depending on how the marriage works, but that's everyone's different thing. I don't know. If I'm married to Lisa, she's deciding, but if I'm Mike, no, I'm just kidding around, right? I get that in a marriage where we're having dinner, that's a 50-50 deal. And the hard part about spouses is we go from making decisions about our kids and where we're going on vacation or dinner, and then I walk on and sit down here. I got to get my head around the fact that I don't have a vote anymore. You have the vote. Now, when we walk in the door at home, I got the vote, you got the vote. That's what's so tricky. That's the hard part. And if you got to get I'm just saying this, I'm beating a dead horse a little bit, but we can't have this conversation without everybody buying into, we're all getting a voice, but only a couple of people have the vote. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, and I think Lisa's saying the same thing, you got to get all these people in a room and have a conversation and say, look, here are the rules. Let's have a conversation. Here's a policy. Patty sent this to me. It's an example of what 1 million other families have done. We don't have to do it like this, but this is what we're thinking. What are your thoughts? What are your perspectives? What do you think? What do you think? That's cool. I'm going to make the final call.
So in Mike's example, where you have 3 people, equal equity, a third, where does and it's got to be, I can't imagine that every business is going to be linear in the fact that, time commitment, sweat equity, that kind of thing. So if everybody, if you start a business and you and your brother and sister each contribute the same amount of money to start the business, so financially you're all equal partners, but maybe your sister's a silent partner and then you and your brother are the ones working your tails off. Can you speak to that? Where is that?
Yeah, so my sister works full-time in the business. My brother works full-time in the business. And I work full-time in the business. far as the money part, I was the one that put all the money. But that's all been taken care of now, and we're all everything's equal. As far as the money part, where we're at right now, for everybody's happy and satisfied with third in all of our businesses.
So if you sold a business for $90, let's assume you have no debt, it'd be $30, $30, $30.
Correct.
That's a sweet deal for them. You're kind and generous. I think part of the challenge you're asking, though, is what about the next generation? And there's two issues there, right, for Mike, for all of us in this room. There are two fundamental issues. Who's going to have the final voting control because their sister's got no one to give it to, A. B, and what about the economic interests? And that's a challenge for you and your brother. And can you work? I mean, the other question is, can you even work there? Can you own stock if you don't work there? Can you be an owner in the business?
Well, we have to decide that. I mean, that's that's part of the getting my head around some of the strategy to formulate the policy.
So what's the challenge when you have owners? And look, you all know the story about Hatfield Meats. I shared it with you. The bacon folks. They got 4 generations, 350 owners. 7 of them work in the business, or 11. 7, I don't know how many. 11, 10, 11. But 300 owners. So you can have a family business in which there are owners who are not managers. Hatfield Meats, the bacon folks, great example of that. But the question, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just saying, so it does work. But the challenge when you have owners who are not managers, in Mike's case, as an example, is what? What's the challenge? If all of a sudden, hypothetically, here's your son, right? Your son is going to, what's his name? Luke. So here's Luke as an example. And he's the only one working in the business, and he's got 4 other cousins, his sister and 3 other cousins, who are off doing their own thing. What's the challenge? What are those, if, I'm often, go ahead.
So I see a couple of different challenges. One of them is emotional. Like, here I am, I have the responsibility for the business.
Bingo.
So you're kind of just taking advantage of the profits, right? Okay, so that's one.
Huge, and you can't underestimate that because that's a big deal. I hear that all the time. My response is, well, if you worked for IBM and you're running IBM, you're doing the same thing. But somehow the president of IBM doesn't mind having tens of thousands of shareholders, all of whom benefit from his or her work. But in Luke's case, and you're exactly right, Luke is not going to be happy with his sister being off skiing in Denver every day. Meanwhile, he's sludging through the mud in Westchester in the snow and mud trying to make the business work. So that's tough. I agree totally. That's a tough issue. No right or wrong. What else are you going to say?
I think just the mechanical part of, or mechanistic part of, depending upon how the equity, the profit sharing versus the salary, what that is set up.
Yeah.
Just trying to identify that.
All right.
Performance.
Okay. So how's Luke compensated, right? Big issue. Oop, we're in our slides. We're out of slides. That went quick.
I think that's more underneath it.
Oh, sweet. Fantastic. So as part of that family involvement policy that Patty will get is the idea of how do we deal with, and you're raising a good point about compensation. And part of the challenge for someone like Luke is to understand, well, really it's Mike's challenge with his brother and sister, to Lisa's point, define now how this comp thing is going to work. And what we all say is there are 4 buckets of compensation in family enterprises. And the first is salary. Who gets a salary? Who should get a salary? I'll ask the executive MBA specialist. Who gets a salary? It's not a trick question. Exactly. If you don't show up for work tomorrow, are you getting paid? Is Patty going to pay you just for being a sweet person and being an awesome, maybe just for pure awesomeness? Other than this little imaginary world right here, if you don't show up for work tomorrow, you don't get paid. And yet, we all know family businesses. You're eating their products down from Acme, in which I shared the story with you. Did I share you the story about the 8 kids in the business and one have, this is a well-known product, 8 kids in the business, mom and dad, 8 kids all work in the business. They all get paid the same because mom and dad love them equally. They all get paid the same. One's in Florida. The woman who runs it works like 12 hours a day. She's working 12 hours a day. Her older brother has got 18 appointments every day. You know what I mean by 18 appointments? If there's no snow in central PA, the guy's playing golf literally every single day. I'm not kidding you. They all get paid the same because mom and dad love them all the same, and they don't want what? Conflict. They don't want conflict. And guess what they've ensured will happen as soon as they die? Conflict. Tons of conflict. That's the counterintuitive sort of problem with this thing on top of our shoulders, is that oftentimes the things we fear, we end up pulling out and creating in our lives. The point is, they all get a salary no matter what. They all get paid the same. One in Florida doesn't work. One plays golf every day. One works 12 hours a day. That is a family policy, a really, really bad one, but nonetheless one that mom and dad have. Mike could create the same thing if he wanted to keep, quote, have no conflict, everybody be the same. But our point is, you got to do it just like IBM, just like if you work anywhere else. You don't show up for work, you don't get paid. People who show up and do the job. The second one is a bonus. And a bonus, by definition, is at risk based on what? How you perform. And I'm not saying in the written policy Lisa's referencing that you've got to define what your kid or son is going to get, but just the concept that you don't get this. You are not entitled to this thing. You only get it if you perform according to whatever your expectations are. The third bucket for Mike and your brothers to think about that is part of my benefit is something that I forgot your name. Gabby. Gabby, do you get perks from working here at the working for Patty?
Yes.
You do? What do you get?
Part of the GA-ship is a tuition waiver.
Oh, nice. All right, tuition waiver. Do you get a phone?
Do I get a phone?
Do you get a phone?
No.
Do you get country club membership?
No.
Do you get health care?
No.
No, none of those things. All right, but you get tuition waiver. That's a great deal. Anyway, I grew up in a family business. I watch Mike and my uncle and my aunt, and they got cars. Who paid for the cars? The business paid for the cars. And then they all got cell phones, they all got health care, blah, 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 blah. The question is, who's getting the perks? And who gets all that stuff? And somehow the challenge is when it goes down the next generation, I assume since my dad got a car, I should get a car. But the problem is there's 5 and there's 15, and we can't afford 15 cars, can we? So the point is, what are the perks? Who gets them and why? And I would say, just FYI, there's 2 categories of perks. One is the family that everybody ought to get. Like if you got a house on the shore and we all go down there and we pile in for Thanksgiving and we have a great time, we jump around, wonderful. Everybody gets it. But the only thing that everybody gets is the stuff that brings us together, like the house on the shore, whatever we do. All the other stuff is based on employment. And some people deserve a car based on whatever job there is, and some people don't. But you shouldn't get a car or a phone or this just because you're a family member, because you can't afford it. There's 5 and there's 50. So there's 2 kinds. There's the family, and then there's the employee one. And then the final one is the final bucket, to your point about how you get paid, is dividends. And, if we have $10 at the end of the year, are we taking that $10 and putting it back in the business, or are we paying it out? And the folks who get dividends are the ones who are who own equity in the business, who have equity. Anyway, the point is clarifying, having Mike, and then put it in writing. These are the rules. You're getting paid, basically, do you get paid at market? Your son comes into the business, you can pay Luke like 30 times more because he's your son. You pay him basically what he get paid if he went to work for someone else, and it ought to be close to market, not way below. And I'm not a fan either of saying, well, you're a family member, so I'm going to pay you less because someday you might be an owner. That's a disincentive. But you raise this issue of how these structural issues. Those are big deals, right? Comp. All, by the way, Mike and his brother's call, but things we have to talk through. Mike, good luck. That's a good luck. Any other part? Yeah, a lot to work on. The good news is, though, is that I think if you can think in your head, in summary, there are family ownership level strategy issues that we got to work on together that require us thinking together as owners and policies. And then that's separate from your business stuff. But, to your point, it's hard to make time when employees are late and customers are screaming and trucks break down. It's really hard to make time for that other stuff. It's really hard. The problem is a broken truck won't kill your business. This other thing, if you don't do it, eventually can kill your business. That's the challenge. It's really important. It's just not urgent. So that's a challenge for guys like all of us in the room, is how to find time for the stuff that's important, even though the urgent stuff grabs us.
And I think, not just in family business, I think we gravitate to the day-to-day details because it's in some ways that's easier to face than the big strategy, right? We face that even with our work at the Cottrell Center. We have to carve out, here's when we're going to work on the strategic plan. And then it gets pushed for this other something and this other fire drill and this something. But without it, after a while, you can see that things are just starting to get choppy.
Yeah.
Because you're just chasing fires down.
Yeah.
Not chasing the real stuff.
And in families also, just like the one that I mentioned with the 8 kids, we fear conflict because it's painful and it can be hurtful. And oftentimes in families, mine included, there's no model of how to do conflict without it becoming bloody. Like in my family, when there was real conflict, it was like not literally, but emotionally, evisceration. It was really ugly. So I, as a human, avoid conflict with people I love, and eventually, what does it ensure I get? Bingo. and it's like my own stuff, right? Like I don't have a model how Lisa and I can have a tough, difficult conversation in which we don't agree and there's conflict, and yet we're going to stay in the room and actually stay loving each other and not abandon each other. That's my own stuff because I don't know how to do it, right? It comes from the fact my mom was an alcoholic, and when we had fights in our family, it was about that stuff, which is ugly and scary. But guess what? I got that stuff. Excuse me. You got yours. We all got our stuff. It's all there, right? Any other thoughts, comments? Challenges?
So just a little bit on what Patty was talking about, trying to carve out time. Have you found any effective approaches? Like we're working on a video for the Cottrell Center. Danny, shout out to you. It's really great. Anyway, and Gary Daniels talked about early on in his career, he carved out a day every 90 days to do some strategic planning, to think about what the next step was. And that really made an impression upon me. Do you find that that's most effective, or is it better to do it in small increments more frequently, or is that just dependent on the situation?
I don't know. How do you spell Philadelphia Inquirer? So, a couple answers, and there's no perfect formula. And I know what Gary did is unusual, but it's brilliant what he did. But the first, I think, step, if you're saying, how do you do this? I would say to Mike, get your do the Philadelphia Inquirer exercise, which is you'd say to your family, imagine we're open up the Inky in 5 years. 5 years from now, what would you want to say about our family, to our business, and 3, you? Where would you want to be in 5 years? And if you want to be running this business and you want to see me out the door, no sweat. Put it down. Honest answer. honest answer. And that's a starting point for all 35 or 500 people that you need to have in the room. I'm kidding. The 10 people you got to have in your room. Start there. It does require deliberate, and maybe it's a Saturday morning. We're all getting together. We're sitting down in in the living room, wherever, and we're actually having a conversation, because it's a way to say sort of what's our vision for the future. Where do we want to be? There's no right or wrong answers. Or where do we know we don't want to be? The things we don't want to be. We don't want to have a fractured family. But if your daughter's saying, I'd really like to run the company someday, that's really good information to have. If you can carve out these extras, here's the challenge. When you do strategy, let's just acknowledge it. We're sitting down to do strategy, and we as human beings so easily get sucked back into the day-to-day. And I see it all the time. Guys like Michael sit down, we're going to talk about this stuff. And 5 minutes later, they're talking about why the dump truck and Freddie dropped the load off the back end of the dump truck, and we're fighting about this. It's so hard to stay focused on the big picture. What Gary did is amazing, but it's really disciplined, and where I see these things break down is if there's not enough structure around these planning things. So they take structure, and if there isn't structure, people get frustrated. And I don't want to sit and, guys, I'm picking on you, Mike, but guys like Mike don't want to sit around and stare at their belly buttons and hypothesize about the circle of the earth. It's got to be focused. So whatever you do, I don't have an answer. If I'm being specific answers, whatever you do, it's got to be really clear. We're going to do this exercise. It's going to be 2 hours on Saturday morning in our office or wherever, and every person is going to talk, and you're talking last. That's part of the deal. It's a starting point. And then based on this, in 4 months, we're going to get together, or 6 months, and we're going to go through a family involvement policy. I'll send it out in advance. I got a copy of this. I changed this. I'm going to send it out. Let's read it through. I want everybody's feedback. Whatever you do, 3 months, 10 months, whatever, make sure it's focused and specific, just to keep it going. And Gary, thank you. God, I'm so bad. Gary was able to do that. He had it facilitated. He had someone working with him who planned it well. You need in my opinion, Mike's got to plan that well. We're going to focus on this, or have someone help him. Gary worked closely with someone who helped him do it, which is why it's amazing. Anyway, your thoughts? You do strategic planning.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things that we talk a lot about is the time frame. So it used to be a much longer time frame now.
Yeah.
The economy is moving so quickly, things happen. You have to plan more frequently, and that presents its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of resources out there that you can draw upon in addition to a facilitator.
Yeah. Totally agree. I think I just spit out a bagel, sorry. Any other thoughts, questions, feedback, things you're really struggling with you want to share with the squad?
This is my husband.
Lisa, the thing about you speaking up, like everyone, I would think you got it all mapped out. Like, you got the whole program, it's a tight package. It's
Right, that's right.
But you're human, right? You're human. So we're all human,
Yes.
and that's a beauty. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes.
I know.
So since my husband is not here, what we run into, and I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, is what we run into is that whole husband, mom, thank you so much. We run into that family dynamic, meaning I know you're the CEO and president, but I'm your husband. Or I know you're the CEO and president, but I'm your son. And I know I'm your mom. But that's the thing that we run into. So when we have our meetings, I have my hat on. I'm used to running meetings. I've run many meetings. But with those people in my house, so sometimes it interferes with running meetings. Sometimes it interferes with no, I'm not mom. So speak to that.
That's hard, isn't
It's so hard. It's so hard, and that's where, like you kind of referenced how you go from intuitive to intentional, and I think the thing you hit on is so hard in families because our roles and our traditions, and we're sitting at dinner, and how we're making or what we're eating or when it's just like this mushy thing. It all comes together. It's so important and so hard, but you got to clarify, and you use the word hats. What hat are we wearing? Get the right people wearing the right hats, the right time, at the right place. And it is hard. And it's about clarifying those boundaries. And I have had personal experience because my son works for me. And I have to remind him, all right, Lucas, I'm talking to you just like you said. I'm not talking, remember, this is not Lucas, Dad and Lucas meeting. I'm talking to you right now as your boss. So it's hard. We got to take off that hat of father, son. We got to put on the hat of boss, employee. And I literally try to remind him of that every single time. It's really hard. Just because I say it doesn't mean it happens. But I also have learned with Lucas, I'm like, well, hey, Lucas, are you responding like as my son in a family, or are you responding as an employee? And I actually so this is just an example story. I was working with this family in South Dakota, and the dad says to his son, hey, Paul, can you run grab a generator at lunch? I need the generator, can you run, go grab it? And the son goes, well, and I'm watching, they're walking out the door, he just had a meeting, he goes, well, that depends. And you see walking, and the dad goes, you just see the dad hair on the back of his neck stand up. Like, what do you mean it depends? And he goes, well, Dad, if you're asking me as my boss, yeah, I'll go get it. I'll run get it. But if you're asking me as my dad, I'm going to tell you I got a meeting with employees in 10 minutes and I can't do it. So is it a dad question or a boss question? And it was really powerful, really powerful. It's exactly, and it's the intentionality that's required. It's intentionality and discipline. It's tough. Just because we say it, though, to your point, Lisa, just because we say it, and I want, Gabby, right? Gabby, I want to remember, this is father-daughter speaking here. That doesn't mean it happens automatically. But you got to practice. You got to frame. Framing tough conversations, putting frames around, hey, Gabby, we got to talk this through. You did this presentation, and I need to talk to you, but I want to give you some feedback. We got to deal with this. I am putting a frame around what is going to be a difficult conversation. She's prepped for it. We're going to have it. Other thoughts, questions, comments? Tough scenarios? You got anything? Other Saved by the Bell. Yeah. I know. You got one?
But no.
Oh.
Yes, Brian, he has anything, and the phone rings.
Yeah. Right there. On cue.
Yeah,
That's
you
it.
call me down.
Yeah, exactly. That's, you said, on cue. I got you.
No, I'm the youngest brother, and there's 3 brothers that are, in the firm, and my wife. And there's no kids in the firm, so I'm thinking, and I had a milestone birthday this year. So
which one's that?
60.
60, all right.
So now I'm thinking several times a week about, oh my God, we're on the clock big time.
So it's 1, 2, 3 siblings?
Yes.
And then your spouse?
Yes.
Your wife, okay. And are the 3 of these, you guys are all owners?
Yes.
1/3 each?
No. Which is fine.
Okay. So it's who's got the final,
the president and founder has the majority.
Oh, okay. Just 51% and it's whatever the number is. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So there's no question who's got the final vote. Okay. What's the big issue, though?
I'm the youngest, and time is not on their side.
We often talk about, and this is a question for Mike too, is this ownership, options, and there's a continuum, right? Continuum, I think that's how you spell it. There's a continuum of options for you guys. One option would be what?
sell?
Sell it. Sell it tomorrow. Like, we can sell. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what your business is and how, but most business owners I know get, they get offers from time to time. The other option on the other extreme is to do what? Have this be a Yingling that goes down for 115, 190 years and 12 generations, right? But there's a whole bunch of stuff in between. The question, I don't know if you've ever had the conversation, but if you had the conversation with this squad about what are the options here? Understanding that at the end of the day, I'm assuming it's your oldest sibling, he's got the final call because he or she's got the vote, but have you guys talked about those options? And do they even want to pass, would they even entertain passing it to the kids?
The kids wanted it.
So what are the options?
In my mind, it's going to ultimately be sell.
If that's where, in conversation here, we're all in agreement, and ultimately then it's, the question is timing, and how do we put lipstick on this thing so it looks really good and we're getting ready to sell it?
Excuse me, I have a question. Brian, right?
Yes.
Are you sure the kid, well, let me say it like this. The kids may not want it today, but is there something in place that says if they change their mind, could they buy it or could it be passed to them? Because what I know is this, children, we change our minds. Okay? So you say sell today, but you never know what they may want.
To Lisa's point, again, whose call is it about whether we sell or pass to the next generation or whatever? Just close it down tomorrow. Whose call is it? These folks right here. But to Lisa's point, it does make a lot of sense to talk through with these folks. These are the things we're thinking about. We're actually thinking about doing this maybe. I don't know if you want to say it, but but who's impacted by that decision? And the answer is 1, 2, 3 family branches. And maybe there's a kid who'd be like, holy smokes, I had no idea. I love the business. I'll buy it from you. It's not their call, but at least they've been engaged and you've given them a voice here. That's really powerful because I think, to Lisa's point, my experience is that we are so often surprised by how young people like Gabby think about our parents' business. And oftentimes we assume what Gabby's thinking, but we have no idea. And maybe she's sitting here at Westchester thinking, I can't wait to do that. Give me a shot. The answer to Gabby might be, I'm sorry, we can't, but at least we've given her a voice and something that is really impactful. Have you been doing it all your life?
Yes.
How many kids, how many next generation kids are there?
I think 8.
8? 8 or 9, 10, who knows how many kids are crawling around.
10.
I got a couple under the closet and under the bed and stuff. We watch our parents go to work every single day. Do you have kids?
No.
No kids. You got nephews. They've been watching their parents go to work every day. It's a meaningful part of their lives. So that's just, these are, all these folks, these next generation folks are impacted players. And all we're saying is that if something is going to impact my life, that mom, a decision she's making, I'd like to know about it. Give me a voice. I understand I don't have a vote. Yeah.
Also curious, and you don't have to answer this, but there's an age difference between you and your oldest, substantial age difference between.
Okay, is it on? Okay. So if there's a significant age difference between you and your oldest brother, then, is the expectation that you would continue to run the business and this would be part of his retirement plan? I would want to find that out because with the understanding that then you would be given more equity or more, you would have this.
Or maybe he wants to buy it.
Yeah.
Like if I'm this one, and you're saying I'll buy me out over time, you'll buy me out over time. My kids don't want it. We've had this little talk. Fantastic. Or maybe you want to wrap it up. I don't know. Maybe you want to play golf the rest of your life. So here's a story. True story. There's a huge factory in North Philly, a company called Cardone Industries. Does anybody know it? You know the business. You know it well? What's fascinating about Cardone Industries, which recently sold, but has been in the family for a couple generations, it is an incredible story of a family ownership group having a deep and profound impact on the competitiveness of the firm. There is a profound familyness advantage. Now again, I understand they sold recently, but prior to that. And what's amazing about Cardone Industries, have you been in the factory? Have you been in the factory? There's a huge banner hanging from the ceiling. And it says, at Cardone, we value our word, our witness, and our people. And at 7 a.m., they remanufacture automobile parts. So there's, 10, 15 assembly lines in the huge factory, North Philly. And every single assembly line, these are UAW, so union labor, which, as you all know, union labor can be hard. And this is inner city Philly, right? These aren't wusses. Never had a strike, though. Never ever had a strike, the UAW workers. But at 7 a.m. when the whistle blows, there is silence in this huge factory. And at every assembly line, the workers are holding hands. And what are they doing?
Praying.
They're praying. So it doesn't happen at Ford, doesn't happen at General Motors, doesn't happen at Chrysler, but you've got union employees who have never had a strike in prayer at 7 a.m. And the amazing thing about it is there are about 12 different languages spoken on the shop floor. And Spanish, Cantonese, Portuguese, Vietnamese, fill them up. And every assembly line has a chaplain who leads the prayer and also works on the assembly line. And we did a case study, and there was an example of a woman from Guatemala who didn't show up for work for a couple that was on the assembly line, she was whatever, and didn't show up for work. And traditionally, if you don't show up for work for 3 days and you're at Ford, what happens to you? You get fired. That's right. In this case, the chaplain who spoke Spanish went and knocked on her door, and she answers the door, and she's got a black eye. And it turned out that she had come to this country with 3 kids, married an American who was a drunk, and he was beating her up. Now, so what do? They got her restraining order, the full protection of Cardone Industries. They got resources, all the stuff. They get her out. They get her safe. Kids are safe. 2 days later, she's back and working, and she's working her tail off. And now her sister works there, and her brother works there. And her productivity is through the roof, and she loves the place. She's deeply committed. So when they talk about this banner, it says our word, our people, and our witness. What are they talking about? Witness. What do they mean? Their faith. Every Friday afternoon, there's a Christian rock band playing in the lunchroom. Michael Cardone goes in there, who's the owner, and he's up there dancing with them, right? And people throw rose petals at his feet when he walks in the door because he's high-fiving everybody and dancing to the rock music and stuff. And at one level, there's kind of a, well, so what, right? All right, great. They have rock music and the banner and this woman, et cetera, all these great stories. But so what? What's interesting is, as you can imagine, this is a highly labor-intensive industry. Productivity is about 35% higher than any other competitors across the country. And turnover is 50% lower. And as all of you in this room know, when turnover is high, it costs a lot of money. And we did a study. We figured they're saving millions of dollars a year on the fact that productivity is higher, but even more important, equally importantly, is the fact that turnover is so low. And turnover is low because there's a unique culture. And that culture comes from where? The top, the family. It's not because the CEO wants it, it's the family. These are our core values. And historically, when people would come in and say, hey, what are you doing, paying UAW workers in North Philly? You ought to move to China or move to Mexico. They were like, no, we're committed to the city of Philadelphia. We're staying here. We're staying here. My point is, they have taken stuff that is right here and driven it down to the shop floor. And in doing so, have created a unique competitive advantage. No one in the industry has that level of productivity or turnover. And I think I say this because that's the opportunity I think that we have as folks who work with families or family businesses. And the thing is, it matters a lot. And it exists in all of your businesses. I know it exists. The question is, what is it? What is it? And in the case of Cardone's, it's based on their faith. For all of us in this room, it can be based on something. There's a culture. There is a familyness advantage. And what is this familyness advantage? And I don't care if you have 4 employees or 4,000, you all have the opportunity for a familyness advantage. This thing, this special bundle of resources that comes from we're owned by a family and how you drive that down into the business. If you watch this, so here I want to show you a couple videos because it's kind of fun and kind of cute. And I want you to, as you're watching the videos, like, what are they selling? Here's a question. What are they selling? And by the way, if you like about 8 tablespoons of sugar in your coffee in the morning, you're going to love the Smucker's commercials, right? All right, so let me...
Tim, nobody ever asked me what I want to be when I grow up. Maybe it's your name. Richard? No, Smucker.
When your last name is Smucker and you live in Orville, everyone knows what you'll do when you grow up. You're gonna make the world's best jam.
I love jam.
For 5 generations, with a name like Smucker's, it has to be good.
What you doing, Richard? Catching butterflies? Strawberries. I'm catching the smell of strawberries. Strawberries?
Tim and Richard Smucker grew up in a family known for making extra delicious jam. The secret? A way to capture the flavorful aroma that used to escape when jam was made.
Hey, don't let it get away. Okay, don't worry.
For 5 generations, with a name like Smucker's, it has to be good.
All right, one other company, Columbia Sportswear, and by the way, they're going to show a woman who is actually the CEO of the company. It's Gertrude Boyle, who is the chairman of the board of Columbia Sportswear. And the tattoo you're going to see is real also. So.
In a world of rugged individuals, only one is the toughest mother of them all. Mother Gert Boyle, maker of Tough Mother jeans.
So, what are they selling? What are they selling there?
Family.
Bingo. They're selling family. And why are they selling family? Here's the question. Why are they selling family?
Because loyalty, commitment.
Bang. Here's the interesting thing. So, and it's not just like we all, the fact is, research has shown consumers prefer to buy from family firms if they know it's a family business. That is a fact, which is why people advertise about familyness. Enterprise Rental, SC Johnson, a family company, because they know, research has shown that if I know as a consumer, yours is a family business, I'd rather buy from you than you because of loyalty, a sense of commitment. I believe intuitively you're going to take care of me. So there's something to it. They're selling familyness. The other interesting thing, though, is because in Columbia's case, it's a family business. They invest heavily in R&D, more heavily than any other competitor. And I had no idea, but as we were looking into Columbia, they're the ones who invented years ago the interchange jackets, which are now sort of everywhere. But you have the fleece and the thing over the top and 2 or 3 layers, right? I don't know, 20 years ago, nobody had done that. And they're the ones who invented those interchange and everybody sells them now. they've got this new, my kid's got this glove that reflects your body heat back on it. So my point is, they invest more heavily in R&D than any other company in the industry, but their profit margin's higher than others in the industry. And they are constantly innovating. That's a family commitment. Both they sell their familyness and they are able to invest more in R&D than other publicly traded companies because, why are they? There was a great article, in summary, there's a great article in the Wall Street Journal a number of years ago, and they were interviewing the chairman of Pioneer Seed, which is a big ag business, global agricultural, they make seeds and pesticides and all kinds of stuff. And the CEO was saying that he was talking about Cargill, which is another family business, was making a huge investment in a plant in India. And the chairman of the president of Pioneer Seed, a publicly traded company, said, that is a great investment. Great thing that Cargill is doing. I wish I could do it, but I can't because I'm a publicly traded company. Cargill can because they're a family business. Now, why was he saying, it's interesting, I can't do it. I wish I could. It's a good investment. It's a 10-year investment. They were able to do it. Cargill was able to do it because it's a family business.
Got to make the quarter.
Bingo. His point was Cargill can invest in the long term. 10-year deal. I can't go out and build a plant that's going to take 10, because I have to show quarterly returns, et cetera, et cetera. But the real point is, Cargill is able to do that. Why are they able to do that? Like, what is it that allows them to do that? Why? And the same case with Columbia. Like, why are they able to invest more? What's required to do that? Cash, but in terms of commitment from the ownership group. A commitment to, I would argue, a commitment to the long run. We're less worried about what happened next quarter. We're willing to commit more money to R&D. We're willing to commit long-term money. We're willing, and why all that, the real point for all this is they're able to do it because they have discussion, because they have dialogue, because as an ownership group, they're all committed, they understand where we're going. We say all the time, you can give information to your fellow shareholders, and if you don't want to give them information, eventually get out your checkbook, because you're going to have to write them a check to get them out. Because if I don't have information and she's running the business, I don't know where she's going, I don't know what she's doing, I don't know why. Eventually, I get scared and I want out. My point is there's a familyness advantage to Columbia. Yeah?
And there's still a level of trust, because I was watching Foods That Built America.
Foods? What was you were watching? What? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Foods That Built America.
That's so cool. Is that a show on TV?
Yes.
Wow.
Hulu.
On Hulu. I will.
They did a story on the Kellogg brothers. Did you see it, Monica? Yeah. And other, like Heinz. But the reason why I mentioned trust in this conversation is because with the Kellogg brothers, I mean, you see Kellogg Foods, but there was no trust.
Bingo.
And because there was no trust and no vision, it couldn't be a family business because the one brother didn't trust the other. So trust had to be the key when it comes to Columbia Brothers and the other companies that you're mentioning.
So, and the thing about, I would say to that point, that it is arguably the most important resource, if RECORCE, is that how it's called, resource? It's arguably, to your point, I would argue it's almost the most important resource in any family enterprise. So for Mike, managing trust and building trust with this entire complex system by having these discussions, by giving people a voice on this, by listening to their opinions, and understanding there's voice and vote. But you can have trust, and I will buy in where you're going if you give me a voice. If we don't have trust, how long do I want to stay as a shareholder? I want out. And all of a sudden, in fact, I want out next month because I know your thing's expiring. I want out tomorrow. I don't trust where you're going. I don't trust you're going to listen to me, et cetera, et cetera. It is. It's arguably the number one resource. And where do we get it? Where does trust come from? It's soft and it's mushy, but it comes from being in relationship, by being in dialogue, having conversation.
I think that has a lot to do with why people prefer to buy from family-run businesses anyway, because of that right there as well. It's
Bingo.
the number one governing aspect in any business, on the sales side, on the client-facing side, and on the management succession side, and
Now,
employee retention side.
Bingo. I was talking yesterday to a guy who was here the first session. It was an engineering firm, Mark Burns. He was here the first session. I happened to be talking to him and his brother yesterday by coincidence. And they were saying that one of the things that makes their place special is that if there's a problem on the site, someone can pick up the phone and call and get a hold of who? The owner. And if you call their huge global competitor Bechtel, which is a huge monster competitor of theirs, like, you're lucky if you can get someone to answer the phone. You get the answer machine, hit 1 for, there's 40 billion people in this company. Trust. Bam. I mean, that's a ticket. Mike, a couple examples. Zildjian. Any drummers in here?
In my family. So I'm familiar with Zildjian.
The banging from the garage, right? The interesting about Zildjian, so it's a family business. They were from Turkey. They immigrated to the U.S. They're one of the oldest family businesses in the world. Started in Turkey, came to the U.S., based in Boston. There's a secret formula. So if you watch a band, one of your favorite bands, 9 times out of 10, the drummer is playing Zildjian drums. And because there's literally, it's a secret formula of how that tin or whatever a cymbal is made of. And it gets passed to a single family member in each generation. The interesting thing now, they're a family out of Boston, and I teach in Boston, and it's now going to a woman for the first time ever in the history of this whole thing. I know, exactly. And she's a daughter, and she is now going to be the, quote, owner of the secret, like the formula. Yeah.
Somebody else has to know it, though, because what if something happened first?
Well, it's in a, it's like it is somewhere. It's like in a secret place, but like you can't, it's hard, it's relative. I mean, people I'm sure bought it and tried to melt it, and you could reverse engineer it in somewhere in fashion. Now there's technology to do that, but it's been around for 400 years. So for much a substantive proportion of that, it was truly a secret formula that no one could copy. Yeah.
I have a question. You talked about trust in a relationship, and I get that whole thing, but having the written agreements allows you to not have to worry about the strategic or the structural things, right? So you can function more effectively. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Your point is, when you have it written down on paper, it builds trust, right? And so it is inevitable, if we are working together, there's trust here, and we've been working in so many family enterprises. Like Mike, you've been in this dance, quote unquote, with your brother and sister for how long? How long you guys been doing this?
30 years.
30 years. 30 years of you guys dancing together, and my guess is every move. You could probably finish your brother's sentences, and you get a call from your sister, and she says, based on her tone of voice, you know what's coming. And that's intuitive, and that's based on 30 years of trust and relationship. Now all of a sudden, and this dance, now all of a sudden, to your point, guess who's showing up? The 5 kids. And they want to be on the dance floor, and they want to have an opinion. And all of a sudden, the rules change. So to your point, and what Lisa was saying earlier, when we have dialogue, and we say, these are the rules for how we're going to do this dance. These are the rules for how in-laws come into business. Either, yes, they're allowed, no, they're not allowed. These are the rules for how you're getting compensated. And it's written down, it's really clear. Any point, to your point, and we said this last time, any time in Mike's complex system, ever-growing, more complex system, there's ambiguity. Where there's ambiguity, there's an opportunity for conflict. And how do we eliminate ambiguity? We have dialogue and then put it in writing. And you know what? Fred, look, I'm sure you are a great surfer. But surfing isn't the qualification we need in our business. Remember 2 years ago, we put this down. You had to work outside, and you had to like have a high school degree, and if you want this, you got to that. It is a way to build trust. So my point is that for 30 years, we have trust in this intuition in our dance. As the system gets larger, more complex, we need structure. We have to complement this relational trust with structure.
You know what? Even with writing it down, I would, at the end of that document, I would have everybody sign it.
Yeah.
So again, in 5 years.
Yeah.
And they say, well, Mike, I didn't say that. Yes, we have.
No, I'm with you. And we do the same thing. And to Lisa's point, it's not a legal document. We're not having lawyers look at it. But who cares? It is I signed it, I read it, I'm in. Totally agree. 100%. 100%. Back to this idea of family. I've shared with you some of our own, like Mike McGrann's family constraints about some of our history. We all have it. All we're saying is you think about where is the fact that you are family owned and operated. Where does that create advantages for you, for your customers, your connections, the trust that I have? If I got a problem, I can pick up the phone. I forgot your name.
Kevin. I'm
going to get Kevin on the phone, man. I know that. And as that Kevin's business grows into multiple generations, we want to make sure that continues. There's a multi-billion-dollar chocolate manufacturer in this country. And if you have a problem, when Dove chocolate gets off whack and they got a problem, they know they can pick up the phone and get the president and CEO of this chocolate company based in East Greenville, Pennsylvania. They got it. Now, if you're making, if you're a teeny weeny customer, that's probably a different issue. But if you're Hershey or you're Nestle and you got a problem, you can talk to the CEO. The point here is, that's a familyness advantage. That's a commitment. That's something, Cardone's familyness advantage is tied to their core values. You guys, you all have one. The question is, what is it? Where is there something special in your business that happens because you are family owned and operated? And where is there something that is constraining your long-term success because you are family owned and operated? And it is happening. And the question is, can you be deliberate and intentional and honest about, you know what, we got this great thing going. Here's why we're successful. Here's a part of our success that's tied to the fact that, we're responsive. We're whatever we are. Oftentimes, that quick responsiveness, customer service, where does that come from? Like, I'm just curious, Mike, what's something you guys feel like you do special for your customers? Like, why do they buy? Do you have a competitive advantage?
Yeah, we do call it competitive advantage. Research and sell products that our competitors don't have, but they get into our place in our warehouse because we've done the due diligence. My background as a chemist, because of the finishes that we work with in our industry, and then the mills that we work with, to do this. So it is, our customers see us as an advantage, and then we've always target a high-end product so that they're always getting quality. And picking up the phone to get an owner or me at 5 o'clock in the morning or on Saturday or Sunday is a possibility. So
if you think about how that's tied at some level to you, and the challenge therefore in terms of succession is what?
Finding someone that's going to have the same commitment.
Same commitment, and what else?
Reputation.
Well, commitment, reputation, passion, expertise. That's really tricky. Like, I could be your kid and come in and have the passion, commitment. It's not to say that always happens, but I can do that because I'm willing to hustle. But I might not be a chemist. So there's a lot of stuff stuck in that right there.
That mind vault.
There's a lot of stuff there. The question then, as we talk about, so that's an advantage, a huge competitive advantage. And maybe there are other chemists and maybe you're doing it, but part of a potential constraint is how do we, if we lose that, like if you drop dead tomorrow, we got a problem. And that's why succession, we talk about succession as a strategy issue. How do you identify first all the stuff that's in there, in that mind? How do we identify it and figure out how do we transition it to the next generation of family or non-family managers? But anyway, the point is, there's some unique, something special that our customers are getting because this is a family owned and operated and led by someone who's got all these expertise. Where is there a constraint? Where does your family, the fact that your family owned and operated, constrain and hold you back? My only point is just be honest. Be honest about where it is. I'll share one other story about Family's Advantage. And again, this is faded. It's faded a bit. Years ago, and I don't know I don't know the facts now, so just recognize that this is a somewhat aged mini case. Philadelphia was the only major metropolitan area in which Frito-Lay's did not have market share advantage. Every other major metropolitan area, city in this country, Frito-Lay's had #1 market share. In this city, in this metropolitan area, do you know who had it? Bingo, Hers. Do you know why? Where do you think Hers sells the majority of their products? Bingo, Wawa. How'd you know that? Just guessing?
I'm a customer. I look at everything from a family.
Because we all love Wawa. It's funny, if I'm in Florida, well, Florida's Wawa's there, but some of them are like, what is Hers and what's Wawa? Like, Tasty Cake, yeah, Philadelphia company, there you go. The interesting thing about that is that for many years, when you went to the counter to order your hoagie, or then even when it was replaced with the touchscreen thing, if you look there, the only product right there was a Hers. And the Frito-Lay was in the back by the ice machine. And that's not because, Frito-Lay has dominant market share in Acme and, Giant and everything. Because why? Because they pay for it. That's how they get the best market. They get the best shelf space because they pay for it. Wawa, they couldn't buy Wawa. Do you know why?
This is Wawa family owned as well?
So who owns Wawa? The Wood family.
Yeah.
Who owns Hers?
The
Her family. And there was a long-standing, really great relationship between the Wood family and the Her family. And the Wood family said to the Hers, as long as you have a competitively priced product, you do your R&D, and it's as good as it lays, you'll have shelf space. Handshake deal. Handshake deal. Is there a familyness advantage there for Hers?
Mm-hmm.
Based on what?
Trust.
Trust? What'd you say? Trust and relationship. And so if you're JM Her, a critical part of the stuff that's here in this body, a strategy issue for the Her family is what?
The family.
How do we ensure that this relationship passes from Al Wood and JM Her to where?
The next generation in those families.
Next generation of families.
And not only that, so I'm from Delaware County. So that's something we were taught as Delco kids. We always went to Wawa. we always ate Hers chips.
Yeah.
And then we passed it on to our kids.
So, and then that's a good point because it's about trust. They have they have the loyalty, incredible loyalty. I mean, that's just amazing. Just Wawa aside, I used to, I had Chris Geisens, who is the CEO, non-family now, first non-family CEO of Wawa, came and spoke at a program. And he talked about the fact when they opened up the first Wawa in Florida, people, I don't know if you heard the story, people waited like 3 hours to get a hoagie. And these are all people from the Northeast who had been down there and hungry for, so to your point, there's something like this literally, he was there, opened it, he was making sandwiches, and he was saying to the group, it's like, look, our hoagies are good. I don't know if they're 3 hours worth of good, but the point is, I'm a Delco guy. You grew up in Delco, man. That's anyway, the real point is there was a competitive advantage, and by that, no one could copy it. Frito-Lay's could not buy it. It was based on a relationship. Next time you're in Wawa, take a look around, what's at the front, what's in the back, and ask yourself what's happened. But that's another story. Quick summary. So here's just a couple quick thoughts. As you think about your long-term family, just think about the differences between family strategy, which is what our core values, ownership strategy, the stuff that Mike's got to work on, and understand that's different than business unit, like what's a pricing. So that's just one big picture. Clarify what are the roles and responsibilities. So one of the challenges, if we're going to be multi-generational, is let's be clear on what is the job of owners. How's that different than the job of a manager? And if, in particular, someone like Mike is going to allow, I'm not suggesting this, but if you're going to allow family members to be owners but not managers, we got to do what Lisa said, is what hat are we wearing? Am I talking to you as dad? Are we having a conversation as owners right now? Are we having a conversation as managers? Those are very, very different roles and responsibilities, and we got to separate them. The other challenge, opportunity, I think, is to think through this idea of your legacy, your vision, and do the Philadelphia Inquirer exercise. And it's kind of fun, even if, it's kind of fun even if you're just hearing people's perspectives. And back to that question, it is, what do you want for the family? What do you want for the business? And what do you want for you? I'm repeating myself, but if I'm in Mike's shoes, I'd love to hear if my daughter Gabby is interested in running the company, or if she wants to be an artist in New York City. I just need to figure that out. We also talked about what it means to be an enterprising family, and what we learned about Mike is that most of the time we think only of our operating business, but in fact, Mike is also a real estate business. He's got real estate partners, so he's also got real estate. You might have some money set aside. They're always heirloom assets, always. And as you think about what life looks about after me, Lisa and her husband, and they can be things as simple as like mom's ring, or the picture on the wall, or that chair. And you cannot underestimate, when I say heirloom assets, talking about those things, because you want to know what people fight about when mom and dad are gone? Sure, some of the business stuff, but the stuff in my experience they fight about more is why so-and-so walked off with that picture, or that ring, or that fill in the blank, who knows what, those plates. That's actually the stuff that people fight a lot about. So have those conversations in advance, A. B, recognize that as a family you have a whole bunch of assets together. And philanthropy can be one of those assets together that we're all doing. This is just, just if you're doing business unit strategy, just do a SWOT analysis. We talked about that a couple of sessions ago, but this is for the business unit, right? Not the owners, but SWOT. And people sometimes roll their eyes that it's too simple, blah, blah, blah. But if you do the SWOT analysis really well, and ask yourself why 2, 3, 4 times, get at the root of, and don't be chicken to create conflict, but what are the core strengths? And dig in. What are they? Where are they based and why? And weaknesses. Looking internally at our weaknesses. We do a lousy job of fill in the blank, pricing, customer service. Why? What's at the root of that? Dig down and get to the real honest answer, and then looking at opportunities and threats. That's just from a business unit. Anytime we're doing strategic planning, it's simple but really super effective. And Patty will have these slides. So these are just some additional questions around business unit and SWOT analysis. And then the final point is this one to Mike about, look, strategy can sometimes, succession can be something scary to talk about because it feels like we're talking about death. In reality, we're talking about strategy, because if Mike gets run over by a bus tomorrow, the company loses that resource pool, and it can't compete like it did before. So succession is not about when Mike gets put out to pasture or when Mike gets run over by the bus. Succession is about how do we make sure this firm can compete if Mike isn't here. So the thing, I'll just ask you, the thing about driving home is sort of, what's a different question? Like, what are you going to talk about? What are we going to ask your spouse, your brother, sister, cousin, kid differently on Monday to try to create some dialogue? Questions, concerns, thoughts?
I want to say I appreciate this training. I really do. I'm not saying this because it's still being recorded. But it really, as someone who's come all 3 sessions, it really made me think, and it's challenging me. And I know that I have to do things differently. So I want to say thank you and thank you and thank you. Oh, you want me to say it again? Okay, so I want to say thank you so much. I enjoyed these 3 sessions, and I've learned a lot. And again, as I said before, it's challenging me and made me think, okay, some of the accountability is Lisa. Lisa also has to change her attitude. And so that really, I appreciate it.
One thought comes to mind as Lisa's talking. Ted Lasso. Everybody seen Ted Lasso?
Just
started watching? Yeah. So Lisa's owning, like, I got to change me, because that's the only thing we can control. The thing that's amazing about Ted Lasso, which is Lisa's second point, is I have to challenge myself to change my attributions or beliefs about others. And the thing that's incredible about Ted Lasso, it is a case study on the power of positive attributions. If you watch Ted Lasso, there's not a single person he meets that he doesn't believe will ultimately be a friend, an ally, that this is going to be a good buddy of mine. Not a single person. And that's the part of the power. It's a study in positive attributions, beliefs that I'm going to choose to have about others. And I love the goldfish. Be the goldfish. Happiest animal on the planet, the goldfish, 10-second memory. Be a goldfish.
Okay, well.
Thanks.
One final, let's just give a round of applause to Mike and thank him for getting here with us, battling traffic from Jersey to here and to be with us. So we really appreciate it. Thanks to all of you who gave your time, an hour and a half, 3 times, 2 times, whatever. We really appreciate that. And as I said, stay in touch with the Cottrell Center. We've got lots of things coming up. Hopefully, this is the first time we've done anything around family enterprise. That's not an area that we've gotten involved with in the past. So hopefully there'll be other opportunities to grow on this. I'd love to have something where we get in, as Mike has suggested, someone at a family firm, like some of the folks he mentioned today, and actually do a real case study or a discussion with them in maybe in a luncheon or something like that. So, and if you've got ideas, please share them with me. Shoot me an email. Hey, we could do this better. You might want to consider doing this, because you are the ones that are in the family business. I'm not. I mean, I was briefly, but I'm not now. And you are the experts in that space. So if you could share with me your thoughts, that would be helpful also. So again, thank you, Mike. Thanks to the Telos Group, and it's been great. Thank you.
Danny Apex Productions.